up, everybody, and welcome back to the Philly Blitz Pod, brought to you by 14th and Market. I'm Parth, here with Pierre and Quell, as well as a very special guest, OJ Spivey. I'm sure everybody has seen him on Twitter. I'm sure the three of us kind of retweeted stuff a lot. We have we have a lot of similar views when it comes to, I think, Pierre's hoodie right there as well. But we're very excited to have you, and so thankful that you were able to join us. How's everybody doing today?
Doing good, man. Doing good, man. A very successful trade deadline period for the Eagles. Excited to talk ball, bro. I missed you guys. We didn't pod last week.
Yes, sir. Wubba lubba dub dub to those who celebrate. It is I, the one and only Quell Fripp Owens. As always, it is sunny in Philadelphia. Bright tail, bushy eyes, and all birds. But I mean, yeah, like you said, man, took the week off, took a break like the team did for the pod, for doing a bye week. I'm so glad that you mentioned the hoodie, Parth. Kind of ticks me off a bit because we can never get on the same coordinate. The moment before I send the message, because we're supposed to wear those on Thursday for the preview pod, since it's Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts. But there we go. We're here anyway.
Wait, you said that?
I didn't. I was supposed to, and then I seen you in the hoodie, and it's like, great, good job, Pierre.
Well, we're gonna have to figure it out. We'll have to be better about that. And how about you, OJ? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I mean, try to do load management this week and all, but things never stop. I covered the HBCU game last week, even though I wasn't in attendance, but wrote a couple stories on that. But of course, we're back to the Eagles and then covering the Sixers as well. But you know how Philly sports is, man. So it's 4 for 4, 5 for 5, or however you call it. So.
Absolutely. It's been a eventful couple of weeks. I mean, there's something special about Philadelphia now. I'm not in Philly right now for the next couple of years. Unfortunately, it breaks my heart seeing the background on your picture there. But there's just something special about Philadelphia when the teams are just doing well, and you got the Sixers just flying high, and I'm sure everyone's kind of got their eye on the score and seeing what's going on there. And then the Eagles just started to kind of get things going. And then obviously you have the trade deadline, which is what we'll get into in a second. It's a fun time to be a Philadelphia sports fan, and the Philadelphian in me is just waiting for the other shoe to drop, but I'm enjoying it while it's here. But as we just kind of mentioned, we had the trade deadline that came up today. Howie Roseman spoke. So very, very eventful day, and an eventful day trade-wise throughout the NFL. A lot of big moves out there. And I'm sure Jerry Jones feels like he completely figured out the Micah Parsons trade and came out on top. So I think that's what just he's so funny, dude. I don't know. And his messaging is going to be hilarious. He's a funny guy. I think that's all you can just take him as a character, because if you look at him as a serious GM, then you're just like, oh boy, like you start feeling bad for Cowboys fans, which is something you never really want to do.
Never.
Exactly. So, with the Eagles in the last couple of days, we've seen a couple of moves. I just want to kind of go around. We have enough people here. I figure by the end we'll cover all of them. What was everyone's favorite move? If we want to start, we can start with you, OJ.
Well, I mean, I like the Phillips move because I feel, even though everybody and their grandmother's talking about, the CB2 position and all, but I'm more of old school. I'm probably older than all of you guys, but I always had the philosophy that, okay, if you get a good pass rush, that makes the rest of your defense, your secondary, your linebackers, that takes a lot of pressure off. And again, if you're talking about the corners, even if you were as good as someone like a Quell Mitchell, you don't have to hold your coverage as long if you get a good pass rush, because the opposing quarterback is getting less than 3 seconds, maybe even less than 2 seconds to throw, on good pressure downs and everything. You don't have to cover as much. So although I don't downplay the CB2 position at all. And, it deserved to be upgraded. But I think when you get somebody who is, as everyone is talking, even the Eagles themselves talking like Jalen Phillips is a blue chipper, or probably excuse the term, but this is Howie's term, what he said today, has freakability, so to speak.
Howie.
So yeah, so I'm partial to the Jalen Phillips acquisition.
I think that's about where I was as well. I mean, I liked one of the other moves we'll talk about in a second, but and maybe it's not the one everyone is probably excited about. But the Jalen Phillips move, I really, when it was he was in the draft, he was a really exciting player. But for me, it was just like the injury history that I was like, I don't know, it was kind of a red flag, especially having to medically retire and then coming back, but there was never a question about his pass rushing acumen and his ability to play in the NFL. And, I think it's kind of showcased itself, and he's been a very solid defender in the league, best year coming under Vic Fangio. But, the injury prone label hasn't kind of gone away, which it wasn't in the way a lot of people might have expected, but he has kind of had a lot of injuries. But I think this is the kind of player that you take a flyer on, and it's an exciting flyer. I kind of preached the entire last couple of weeks that, we're probably not going to see something super exciting. And of course, as soon as you say that, then Howie Roseman goes and surprises you and makes these like fun mid-season moves. But I think Jalen Phillips can really be a needle mover, and just he can step in and be your starting other defensive end, and then you can have Jalix and Josh Uche come in fresh. And OJ, maybe there might be an age difference, but if you're an Eagles fan, I think you just have a deep set belief that we want a stable of pass rushers, because that's what we've seen bring us success in the past. We've lived with horrible corner work and somehow put together defenses that are formidable because of that pass rush. So, we had kind of talked about it before the deadline, and I guess there was a little bit of time in between, but we didn't pod. We talked about it. What would be more of a question for you? And Quell and I said the trenches, and Pierre said cornerback too, but it was a long discussion because it was there were clear questions on both sides. So I think exactly, and so I think it's exciting that they were all kind of addressed in some way, and we're going to just see Vic Fangio with even more talented players added to the mix, and I think that's always something exciting. How are you guys feeling about the Jalen Phillips trade? And then Pierre, tell us about your favorite trade.
Brother, I don't even think this is a question, man. Like Quell put it in the chat, bro. I love Jalen Phillips coming out of Miami, dog. Like I saw the notification, a smile came across my face, man. He was my dog when he was coming out of Miami, bro. Like you talk about a blue chip player, bro. Like I'm gonna read what I wrote up on him in my top 100 prospect big board in 2021.
Flex.
Jalen Phillips possesses a nice blend of speed, power, technique, and versatility as an edge rusher. Phillips can line up standing up or with his hand in the dirt. He plays with a high motor and excellent agility off the line of scrimmage. He employs a very diverse pass rushing repertoire, utilizing a nice combination of swim, bend, rip, and spin maneuvers. I think Phillips' best attribute is his understanding of how physically gifted he is. He uses his 6'5", 260-pound frame and gets into offensive linemen and beats them, either with flat-out speed or technique. He isn't without flaws, though. He only played in 20 career college games through 3 years, and that's a 20 out of possible 36 games. Phillips even medically retired at one point during his collegiate career due to a concussion. He'd be higher on my, as well as many others, draft boards if it wasn't for his injury history. But the thing with Phillips is his ceiling is extremely high. That pretty much sums up how I feel about this dude, man. Like, if he can stay healthy, the ceiling for him is so high. Like, you talk about physically gifted, bro. 6'5", 260 pounds. Give me a second here. Since week 5, he has the highest pressure rate in the league, 7th in run stop win rate. Like, this dude is a flat out baller, and it's if he can stay healthy. But I love the Phillips move, man. I love it.
And it's exciting because that pressure rate, people can, you can go either way with it, right? Because there's my family, they're all Dolphins fans, so the group chat was just kind of like, good, I'm glad we got a 3rd round pick. And I was like, I don't know, maybe I would have built around him, but they have Chubb and whatever.
I mean, from a lot of the Dolphins fans I've talked to, sounds like he's going to fit right in, especially how he's operated this year. It's a whole lot of almost there, just not enough.
Right.
Can't bring the quarterback down, but always in the vicinity type of thing.
Exactly. But it's come all over the defensive line. And that's what's exciting is you have him and you have Brandon Graham coming in, who has also that kind of option multiplicity, Pierre, to use your favorite word. But they have that ability to play across the defensive line. And, you're just giving Vic Fangio chess pieces. He's had chess pieces on the back end, and now he has some on the front end. And I think that's going to make something kind of scary for the rest of the league.
And before you go, Q, like I thought it was very interesting to point out. Like we talked all about how the players in Miami, they hated Vic. Vic didn't like them. They didn't want it enough. This seems like the one guy that Fangio wanted and that loves Fangio.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I'm not sure if you guys had
everybody on the team didn't like them. had to be somebody, right? So
yeah, man, that everyone's saying kick rocks. I believe it was. But I mean, I forgot who dropped a piece, but a piece came out about Jalen Phillips yesterday as soon as the trade went down, and he was ecstatic to be in Philadelphia. He talked about his relationship with Vic Fangio and how he felt like he had some of the best years of his career with the best year of his career with Vic Fangio. The problem with me, I mean, I get what you're saying about the upside of what could be for Pierre. I just hope you understand that I don't want to say we're talking about a different player now, but the injuries have began to take their toes. We're talking about a guy who's had an ACL tear and an Achilles tear. So it's not like he's a young buck. So, I mean, hopefully, like you said, he can stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, like I kind of outlined on the last pod when we were here, we're getting to a point with the Eagles where a weakness is becoming a strength. You get Nolan Smith back. You got Jalen Phillips now. Of course, you got Jalen Hunt, who's been playing some really good football as of late. Josh Uche, who's playing solid ball. And then, of course, the aforementioned Brandon Graham, where you start talking about a pretty deep group. I outlined on Twitter, I believe it was the other day, about how I believe the group could potentially be used. I'm eager to see exactly where Jalen fits in terms of base, or if they view him as basically a pure pass rusher kind of guy.
Well, I think that's
Miami. They kicked him. They've kicked him inside on a couple of snaps.
When I say pure pass, let me reframe. When I say pure pass rusher,
third down,
is he only not just third down, but is he only featured in when we go nickel, when we go dime, these type of aspects, instead of how they've been playing a lot of base recently?
Well, I think those are good questions, Q, but they're also good problems to have. Because we know going back to last year, and of course, every year is different for each team, whether you're good or bad. What they like to do, what Howie Roseman likes to do roster wise, is have as many deep guys on the defensive line. Hopefully, we may not see what we saw last year, of course, no matter how good Phillips comes in and he is, right? Because they always had that good rotation of guys who could stay fresh, and hopefully that can be a positive for someone as injury prone as Phillips, where he doesn't have to be in on every snap. And again, as you talk about the different packages, different defensive packages, to where they can really utilize his talent, to where maybe he won't get caught up in, let's say, jumbo packages on the offense where he gets caught up in the run and, he gets, rolled up on and different things of that nature. So that's really the Eagles' philosophy, is to, rotate in as many guys as they can to keep everybody fresh, so nobody won't get winded, or, maybe keep injuries to a minimum. So that is the best case scenario. And real quick, if I can, going back to Vic Fangio, and, we all talked about or joked about how, as you said, Q, kick rocks, right, in Miami. But getting to know these guys, or most of the guys in the defense, going back to last year, when everybody was really spooked about, okay, how good is this defense going to be with Vic Fangio? I was very impressed, because last year I just thought, okay, he was brought here to restore order. so to speak, to even just make this defense an average defense, because we know the offense is probably good enough to where they could carry the team on in certain times, but defense ended up being a strength. But going back and even talking to the guys and all, and the young talent, the young core that they have on this defense, they needed somebody like a Vic Fangio to, number one, recognize their talent, and then number two, hold them accountable. Because they have enough young guys and they have enough smart guys. And again, this goes back to how the Eagles scout, how the Eagles vet players, to where not only are they talented, they also have to be coachable. And that's really why they brought Vic Fangio in. In fact, they wanted to bring him in, I guess, in 2023, but thanks to Jonathan Gannon, that's a whole nother story. But the whole thing, where he interviewed for Arizona and all that jazz.
Not going anywhere.
Right.
In the car. Yeah,
exactly Parth, right. So but yeah, that's just a little just background and everything. And again, hopefully, as you said, Q, the injuries here for the rest of this season will be in a minimum, because they do now have, I think, the rotation that they want.
So, interesting fact about his injuries. It's play devil's advocate, Q. For the first 2 years of his career, he was healthy, relatively healthy, right? In the two lower body injuries, one of them came last year. I think it was Black Friday, and against the Jets at MetLife, and we all know how terrible the turf is there. And then the other one, Jordan Poyer rolled up on his ankle, or he ran into his ankle, or hit his knee, or something like that, and that caused the ACL tear. So
I don't think it's a question. Sorry to interrupt, but I don't think it's a question about it, like, injury prone in that way, but the injuries could have taken their toll to this point, right?
Yeah.
Fran Duffy kind of pointed that out in his film review that I read on all PHLY, that like a lot of these kind of missed tackles, the high pressure rate, not finishing, a lot of those can be due to lower body tightness, which can kind of be attributed to pretty big lower body injuries, right? Those are hard, but that's not something you can't come back from, right? And the Eagles have a pretty incredible training staff at this point in time with the recovery.
They do now.
Exactly. It took me a second to kind of say it, because I still, like, part of me has just been scarred.
Before, it was like nightmares coming out of that place. So
always it was like, oh, something new popping up all the time. But they've just been.
Which player was it that was suing the medical staff? Was it
Chris Maragos?
Yeah,
Chris Maragos. Yeah.
Yep. A couple other guys too, I believe. So, but he was a primary. It was almost like a class action almost.
Mm-hmm.
But they've cleaned house there, and they have a wonderful training staff now. Yeah.
So hopefully, you can kind of figure things out. Maybe get the foam roller out. Stretch a little bit. But I think it's just, I think, as you put it, OJ, I think it's a good place for him, because they're gonna have the ability to rotate, and with BG and Jalen Phillips kind of coming in and having that ability to play across. Maybe Jalen Carter can also get some rest, because Moro Ojomo now has been playing really well throughout this season, and kind of coming on strong throughout the last couple of weeks. So gonna be fun to see the front of the defense.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's move on to Michael Carter II.
All right.
I know initially there's been a lot of chatter about him coming in and potentially usurping Cooper DeJean, who then move out to outside corner and everything like that. But just from the tea leaves and everything that I've seen, I think it's more insurance for Cooper rather than moving Cooper outside. This is a guy who's very versatile, inside-outside versatility, can play safety. He played there at Duke, was an elite nickel corner, like, a year ago with the Jets. He signed a 3-year, $30.75 million contract. It made him the highest paid nickel corner in the league at the time. And then now he's been traded for, what was it, a 5th or 6th round pick? Mm-hmm. So it begs the question to me, like, what happened? And I know, like, they've changed coaches, scheme, and everything like that, but, like, the dude's play just fell off a cliff.
What'd you say, Quell?
I said scheme fit. But,
yeah.
I mean, it kind of goes into what Pierre was just saying. It's hard to play. And conversations like this is like one of my favorite things when you start getting to the scouting aspect of, you You guys gonna get me on my soapbox, my goodness. But it's so hard. That's why when you hear people criticize people like Terrion Arnold, it's like, I mean, don't get me wrong. When you look at the stats behind everything, it's not going to look good. When you play these defenses that ask you to play so much man coverage, like an Aaron Glenn defense does, you kind of left on the island, buddy. Versus when you come to a scheme like here, where, don't get me wrong, there are your fair share of left on islands with the match coverage that they play defensively. But for the most part, Vic does a good job of making sure that you don't get caught with your pants on the ground. If you do, it's probably your fault. Like I said this a couple weeks ago, it's very refreshing watching a defensive coordinator or a coordinator in general, where it's like, it's very rare that I watch Eagles football and I say, that was a bad call, Vic. It's always, man, somebody messed up somewhere, because he does such a good job of putting them in position. So I'm hoping the acquisition of Michael Carter II does something good for Philadelphia. Like you outlined, Pierre, over 2,000 career snaps from the slot. It was interesting to hear Howie speak today, where he even mentioned the thought about him playing some safety, I believe it was. So there's that. He only has 10 career snaps at safety. So
he played safety at Duke.
Here we go. See, the versatility, the multiplicity you guys were mentioning. But even outside of that, 46 snaps as an outside corner. Most a great friend of the pod, Anthony DeBona, actually pointed out that most of those outside corner snaps actually came in a game against the Eagles a couple years ago. So, and he actually played very well. I think the Jets ended up winning that game. Played really well on the outside that day. But
that was the first Kelly Green game. No, I'm talking about the Jets. Yeah, you're right. I think we're still talking about Miami. But yeah, that I remember that Jets game. I think they actually lost that game.
That was Zach Wilson, right? We lost to Zach Wilson.
Yep.
That was the game when Jalen, the dude was trying to tackle him, and he held him with one hand and still threw the ball.
Oh yeah.
Look at Pierre, always gonna find a way to bring some aura out of this. But like you kind of outlined, Pierre, I'm pretty excited. I think this is more of a versatility type of move, getting him. I think that Giants game specifically, and I just talked about how much base this team has been playing because of the problems they've been having at cornerback too. But that Giants game specifically, where they even had some reps where they moved from Cooper to the outside in nickel, and they were just getting abused on the inside. It was like, now you're just creating two holes instead of one. So now you're putting yourself in a position where, God forbid, you have to, like, they're trying to bring in all the reinforcements they can. Hell, it sounds like Asante Samuel Jr. is ready to sign. So bring all the reinforcements you can, buddy. But they trying to restore order at cornerback too. But in the event Cooper does have to move out, I think we have a capable nickel corner now.
It feels like he's a guy who just needed to change the scenery, because that ability, like, he was legit one of the best nickel corners in the league. That ability just doesn't leave you overnight.
That's what I was just gonna kind of get into. In that, this is it's. We talked about it at the beginning of the season when we discussed what do we do about cornerback 2, because everybody questioned, should we just put Cooper out there? He's done it in the past. He's shown the ability to cover inside so well. Why can't he do it outside? And he's shown this year that he can do it. But the main concern was that you're creating two holes instead of one. And I think, even if this doesn't work out, I think it's just such a good value that you kind of you have to take it. And I think that's what Howie Roseman likes to do. Is if he sees value, he's going to take a shot. And I think you can appreciate that. And, we obviously traded for him, and then we'll get into the next trade. And now you have a couple of just kind of shots in the dark there that have a pretty good chance of hitting, because those guys were both elite corners a couple of years ago. And if things can just click with the right coach, which we all feel that they have the right coach in the building here, then, and if they fit with that, with the coach, then all of a sudden you might just have, solved these issues on your defense for, just fifth or sixth and a seventh. I mean, you're going to do that anytime you can, especially with what we've watched this year. We want to just see some new bodies in there and see what people can do. So it's definitely an exciting pick or trade. OJ, do you have any other thoughts on Michael Carter? Michael Carter, not Michael Carter Williams.
Yeah, it's so easy to add Williams to it, right? But Michael Carter is second. That's where I make sure I don't get in trouble there. But anyway, but yeah, I agree with your sentiments, especially you, Parth, because I think it is versatility or insurance for Michael Carter. And as you said, Q, the Eagles have been playing a little bit more base, and that's where you saw some snaps where they put Cooper out there. And one thing I love about Vic Fangio is, every coach is going to give you a good amount of coach speak, but I always love his press conferences. I'm not there most of the time because I do other work, but I just love listening to his press conferences because it's no filter, and he really gives you great insight on what he expects from the defense, what the defense is doing, without giving away any secrets. And then again, how he holds guys accountable. And if he says like a guy's doing well, he'll say yes. So a lot of times to our surprise as media, but then when a guy who's not doing well, he'll say that too. But he does in a way where he doesn't totally bury them, right? Yeah. Which I think is cool, but it still, again, gives us great insight. But going back to Carter and DeJean, and as you said, Parth, you don't want to nullify two positions by moving one out. But I think it's smart. It has been smart what Vic was already doing in base and not knowing, what you're going to get about Adoree Jackson, where I believe if I looked at his numbers or something of that nature, it wasn't all that bad. I guess even the last couple of weeks, but which is kind of wild. But anyway, I think what they were doing already is smart. But then when you bring somebody like a Carter in, if you probably won't happen now because they got Alexander, and then you have a couple guys back from injury. I think Bennett's coming back from injury this week too, I believe. But again, they have plenty of options, and I don't know how you're going to keep everybody on the roster too, because I do expect some type of move within the next week or two. But anyway, again, I do think it is more insurance, and again, Eagles like to have rotation. Not, we haven't seen that as much from the secondary players the last couple of years, or at least since Vic has been here. But I just think they have more options, and like you said, Park, why not take a flyer on somebody like a Carter? Because obviously they think even if his skills may have diminished or he hasn't had as good a year in New York, they're 2-7, so how great they have overall, but he does have experience, and a lot of times, if you spend enough time in the league, what you may lose in ability, you may gain in experience. And that's another thing that I've learned from guys being in the locker room. We're saying, if you discuss maybe certain plays or you ask them about certain plays, they'll kind of tell you how, okay, it went this way, so we didn't have to do this, or I didn't have to go as hard, or I knew the guy next to me was going to pick it up, but I was still there to make the play if need be. So,
absolutely. All right, Q, you want to give us our last trade?
Oh yeah, of course, man. Trade for Grandpa. No, but on a serious note, Jair Alexander, that intriguing from a initial standpoint. Took a while for me to digest on me. I'm pretty excited about the prospects of what it could be, because I feel like he's not going to react. He shouldn't be, because we just talked about it at cornerback room having 8 bodies, but he's not going to be asked to do as much, man. And I think we had this conversation last year about Darius Slay, where there was talk of should they trade Slay, should they not trade Slay, and I was like, they're not going to trade Slay, because Slay is the kind of cornerback that teams like that are competing trade for. They want that old wily vet that could come in and make a play late in the season, that could help coach up some of the younger cornerbacks on the team, and that's kind of what you got right now in Jair Alexander, where I don't want to call him Grandpa now. Just a few years ago, he was making some plays, but between injuries and, Parth, as you say all the time, that father time in the cornerback position, it happens so fast. Sometimes now you see me, now you don't, kind of thing. So he hasn't been as good this year, but I do think him playing, and he has had some success in a similar scheme during his time in Green Bay, albeit as we like to call it, the bastardized versions. But now he's here with Vic Fangio, and the best part is he's covering wide receiver twos. There shouldn't be an expectation of him having to guard the best player on the field, especially because we've seen them show a willingness to travel Quinyon Mitchell. So I'm excited about prospects of what it could be, not just him on the field, but him the mentor, him what he can help with Keeley and Ja'Cory and some of these younger guys.
Sorry, Pierre. I'm just gonna go because this is the one I was the most excited about, which is maybe a little stupid, but I was just such a big Jair Alexander fan when he was just playing at his best. He just he just kind of had that attitude, and he played cornerback the way that I thought it was fun, and watching some of those Packers defenses. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Always kind of talking the games with AJ. I'm sure those practice matchups are going to be kind of fun now to watch. So, I exactly kind of how you put it, Quell. But we're going to refrain from calling him Grandpa because he's only a year older than me. So I don't know what that would make me.
Man, y'all call me all types of old, so let it rain.
Listen, man, listen. But coincidentally, he's also kind of the same age that Slay was when he came to Philadelphia. They were both 28. So, in the same vein as we kind of talked about with Jalen Phillips with the health and with Michael Carter II in terms of fit, if those both can hit here, I think it's a really exciting trade for really good value. And some of the things that I've read about him and heard about him recently is that he was doing some exciting things in practice, but the Ravens, like, their defense is not very good, but they do have corners who can play at this point in time. And the issue is Jair doesn't really play special teams. So kind of just became a decision of we can just kind of move on from him, make space for other guys or whatever it might be. But, he wasn't really going to play there, and they figured they wanted to get some value out of it. And so they made the trade. And so if things are trending the right way, he's been injured, and if he's just starting to get healthy and then he can step in here and, as Quell said, cover the cornerback too, I think it's a match made in heaven. And I think he gets to play in a scheme that's a little bit more similar to what he played in Green Bay when he was at his best. I think it's an exciting trade, and I think this guy could end up being that wily vet who makes the play at the end of the year. Quell, I'm excited, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, like for me, this is a move that probably ranked the lowest on the totem pole in terms of the three trades they made. Like
you saw the jersey, huh?
Yeah,
it was the sleeves, no or.
It's intriguing, man. Like, it's intriguing, like you said, because he's been a Pro Bowler, he's been an All-Pro, but like if you watched him this year, he hasn't really been good. Like, the Ravens traded for him, and he played 2 games, right? 61 snaps. And then they legit banished him to the shadow realm. Like, he has not played. And the Ravens defense has been horrible, like piss poor, and he has not played. So to me, like, if you couldn't get on the field for them, brother, like,
but their corners haven't been bad. It's not like the corners have been the worst part of their defense. Like, the corners have probably been the only bright part of their defense this year. So that's why, like, crazy that you're like, oh, he's washed. He's so injury prone. The Jalen Phillips, come on, man. Don't hate on my guy, dude.
No, I'm not hating. Like, if they can get him back to playing competent football, just be competent. Just don't be Adoree Jackson or Keely Ringo.
Play your position.
Yeah. Do your job. And I think it'll be a good addition. But like you guys said, there is a saving grace. 2018 and 2022, those were his All-Pro years. In 2018, Christian Parker, the Eagles' current defensive backs coach, he was defensive quality control with Green Bay. It's been well noted the relationship that those two have. He's going to be under Christian Parker again. And then Vic Fangio, the system he played in 2022 was with Joe Barry, who, when Joe Barry was the Packers defensive coordinator, and Joe Barry, speaking on Joe Barry, he I think he coached with Brandon Staley, who got his start as a coach under Vic Fangio. So there's some kind of overlap with the scheme and system and everything like that. So again, if they can kind of get him back to playing competent football with coaches that he's been around in a system that he's familiar with, it'll be a good addition.
Just a little side note on Christian Parker, man. Like that's that's what makes me so excited about having Vic Fangio in the building. Because sometimes the little things about coaching really matter and about getting the most out of your players. Like I was reading a piece earlier today about Christian Parker and his relationship with Jair Alexander and how he was in the room trying to make sure he got the most out of all his guys, and he had to make sure that he always looks for little tidbits to how he can make his guys better. He said he wasn't doing this at first, but he started watching like solo film of specific wide receivers, the guys that Jair would match up against on the week, so he could, when they're watching film or in cornerback meetings, he can sit there and tell him about the little tell-alls. Well, when they line up with the left foot like this, what route is he running? Basically trying to make, because he know that Jair is a film head. So these are the little things that he looked for. So he like, well, how can I make my player better? And that's the type of little things that Jair said brought their relationship closer together, because you could tell he was invested in him as a player. He cared. So exciting to see that get back together, man.
Dude, with Christian Parker, they need to do that thing like colleges do, where they like make him like
Coaching waiting,
DC or something, but just make him the DC in waiting. So
I
when
definitely
Vic retires, just let
I
Christian
think
Parker step in, man.
I think he is. Honestly, because there's no like after last year, the year they had, like him coaching Quell, Mitchell, Cooper, the Gene. There's no reason why he didn't get a DC job.
He can't leave the building, man. He can't leave the building.
I agree, guys. Listen, so many fans just told me, said they can't let Christian Parker out of the building. They can't, because like, you know, they said, oh, he's going to be a DC, he's going to be a head coach and everything. They can't let him outside of the building. And I totally agree, because they think the world of him. The players do, the coaching staff does. And, you know, what you mentioned, Quell, about those little details. And I think that's the philosophy. And I think that's why people in that building and the Eagles organization think so highly of Nick Sirianni, because you can say what you want about him. And I'm gonna just get on my soapbox a little bit about Nick. I like Nick because of how the coaches play for him, but I never thought of him as a great offensive mind, right? Mm-hmm. But he's an excellent motivator. The guys will run through a wall for him. He relates to them as a millennial and all those things. And I think that's a positive. And he really has grown into the job. And even Jalen Hurts to tell you that. He's really grown into the job, right? But those little things, and the players have hinted around with it, like, you know, they're interviewed and everything, even like what Jalen touched on in America's Game, like, you know, the attention to detail, all those things. He expects that from his coaches and everything. And I think they have, you know, whether that's Vic, whether that's Christian Parker, the running backs coach, Jamel Singleton, who Saquon Barkley thinks the world of. He's like really made him, you know, we all knew about Barkley's pedigree, right? But he really attests himself going to the next level because of Singleton, because they care about those little details so much. So what you mentioned about Parker, guys, that's really a big thing. And like I said, hopefully that will pay dividends for bringing a guy like Alexander in, because again, what you said, Pierre, is if he just does his job, I mean, he doesn't have to be a playmaker necessarily,
right?
Because you have DeJean, you have Blankenship to some degree, and you know, maybe this will help Makuba as well, because you know he has struggled sometimes in the safety position and learning the position, everything, which I thought he would be. That's really not surprising to me. But again, you know, these are all low risk, high reward acquisitions, I believe, with Phillips being the X factor there, where you know there's shines of greatness there. But you know, we'll see how it does. And I think, and I know we'll probably get into this later, but I just think, you know, anyway, they're in a great position, and just bringing these guys in with what happened in week 9, with, you know, the other teams losing and all those things. If the Eagles can somehow, go on a bit of a streak. I know there's tough games against Green Bay and Detroit and all, but with these guys that they brought in, I think it's a positive. And even if they don't work out, I still think they'll be in pretty good shape.
If we can get, like an Adamik Sue level of competence from Jair Alexander, I think you're in a really good spot. And I don't see why that can't. I don't see why that can't happen. Because it paid dividends with how he coached up Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, and he was able to produce on the field. So yeah, I think it was an exciting trade deadline. Could have been, I don't know how authentic the report was. Could have been even more exciting if the Browns wanted to play ball. Apparently,
they were to touch on that.
Yeah,
Howie also got asked about that in his presser, and of course, he couldn't flat out say, "I want Michael Parsons and Myles Garrett," because he joked. He was like,
"I tweeted about that." He didn't mention them. He cannot mention them.
But he definitely said if the opportunity is there to go get an elite football player, they will not hesitate, because that's a part of the job, man. And that's what makes Howie so good.
And Lori even said it himself. I think who was that? Do I need to say her name? But DR. She said, during the owners meeting, I think last week, when she was able to talk to Lori, I think that was her that talked to Lori, and he echoed the same sentiment. So
I think we can use this kind of as a transition point. He echoed a similar sentiment when asked about trading AJ Brown. That we're in the business of acquiring these game-changing talents. We don't want to trade them away. Obviously, this season it's been up and down with the saga. While they've been able to win on the field, there's always just kind of been the backdrop of, is AJ Brown happy? Now, obviously, DR is stoking the flames there because of a certain AFC manager who I'm sure is just the Patriots, just like constantly saying, "Oh no, AJ Brown wants to come here. AJ Brown wants to come here." The fans of the Patriots have just somehow like created this narrative that AJ Brown and the Patriots are just like a thing. And I'm so glad the trade deadline is over, because we don't have to hear about it for at least a couple weeks. We don't have to hear about it. But we've talked about it on the podcast before, and we want to get your thoughts on it as well, OJ. But why would you trade a guy who's this good? With a guy who can change the game like AJ Brown can. I think you find ways to make it work with him, because he's a talented guy, and this comes from him caring, right? And I think there's a distinction that can be made there, because there's some guys who are doing it because I whatever reason. It might be for a contract, it might be for something else, and maybe you can't blame them for those reasons. There might be some other context there, but this is because he wants to contribute to the team. And there was that piece that was put out with The Athletic, which I think it was The Athletic, but I thought it was really well written, and people kind of were like, what were you saying?
Brooks Cabina, he did a phenomenal job.
Yeah,
with that piece.
I really enjoyed the piece, because OJ, I've said it on the pod before, but AJ Brown was my favorite player in the league before he came to the Eagles. Like that's my prototypical like favorite type of receiver to watch. And so when we traded for him, I was ecstatic. I was like, this is unbelievable. We have AJ Brown on our team now. And so to me, the antics come from him just kind of caring, and he's just frustrated. And I think you can understand that just on a human level. Like, people can be frustrated. Things can be going well, and you can get frustrated on the little things, and you can get caught up on them. And so from where I'm sitting, I just kind of want to be like, as long as things are fine in the locker room and people are talking, people are able to play football together and keep the main thing to put it in Jalen Hurts terms, I don't see an issue with it. People can say what they want. We don't have anyone doing a podcast this year. We had 2 players doing podcasts a couple years ago. It's just like it's always a thing. People can say whatever they want. AJ Brown can post a couple of cryptic messages. He can read a book on the sideline. Like, if you're able to produce, if we're still winning, like, I don't have an issue with it. So definitely interested to see, how you're feeling, having watched this kind of up close and seeing, from a different perspective than the average fan.
Yeah, I think he is frustrated, and I think bottom line is, and it probably is, that he wants to be a part of everything. He wants to contribute. My only pushback with that is, if he wants more targets, if he wants more catches, all of those things, what does that look like in the grand scheme? What does that look like within the team concept? And even as the team is still winning, all right. And he's even talked about still contributing, like on things like the tush push, where he's just looking busy, right? But yeah, my only pushback, and I hope to get to ask him that, because everybody's at his locker, so it's kind of like, okay, that's a whole other story. We'll probably get into that later if time permits. But what does that look like? Because I have written about this, I have tweeted about it, where not only is AJ a Super Bowl champion, he's a 3-time All-Pro. He also owns several franchise records. He owns a couple of NFL records. So if he is longing for more, to be more and more involved, which I get in a sense, and he's not wrong. In essence, he's not wrong. But what does that look like in the grand scheme of this team still being 6-2, currently the number 1 seed? They have a great inside track if they can, pull off Green Bay and Detroit, and then, at Dallas, they'll be in tremendous shape. They'll probably win the East, within that time. But what does that look like to where it's still in the team concept? Because we can look at a number of ways. When he came here, he already knew that Devontae's on the other side. He already knew that Goddard's on the other side. So, and again, he holds the franchise record for catches in the season, and even receiving yards in the season.
Yep.
Well, catches for the wide receiver position.
Yeah,
owns the overall reception record. But again, he's still on track to get at least 1,000 yards this year. He may not have maybe half as many catches, but because him and Jalen hook up so beautifully well downfield, his yards are going to, be up there. The catches may not be there, but what does that look like for him being more involved, to where, okay, what does that take away? And even if you're going back the last couple of years before Barkley was here, they still had 1,000-yard rusher in Miles Sanders. They had 1,000-yard rusher in DeAndre Swift. So that's my only question. But again, he's not wrong in essence. Maybe you should be more involved. But I think also too, they were still trying to figure things out. From the offensive coordinator standpoint, again, you have Jalen Hurts yet with another offensive coordinator. And I'm going to tell you, as crazy as this sounds, if they get back to the Super Bowl, Patullo's probably out the door too, because a lot of teams are desperate for offensive minds, whether you think they're good or not. And, the jury's still out for we don't know how well Kellen Moore is going to be in New Orleans. He needs a quarterback, obviously. But I thought he was great here, even though, the offense, if numbers weren't what we were used to going back to 2022.
Right.
But, I think they'll be okay. And to echo what you were saying also, he is revered in the locker room. They love him. He has his new best friend now, and Cooper DeJean, I guess. Blanket should probably be a little jealous. But
all right, Jalen and Reed gonna hook up soon.
Yeah, probably so. Probably so cute. But seriously, he's still revered in that locker room. They still rely on him. And Jalen has not thrown to him less. So, and that says a lot of, he has to, because he is the quarterback of this team, right? But he's going to do whatever it takes to win, whether it's throwing to AJ, whether it's throwing to Goddard, hand off to Barkley, etc. Right? But that part of it hasn't deteriorated, so that's a good thing too. So he's open downfield. Jalen's going to hit him same way he's going to hit Devontae Smith, same way he's going to hit Goddard. So they got a good thing going on. So hopefully it just all stays together, and it's just nothing more than him just being hungry and again wanting to always be a contributor.
Before you both get into it, I think I just want to point out what OG just said there. They've kind of figured things out in the last couple of weeks. I think once you get AJ into how this offense is moving right now, I think things can get scary.
I'm excited.
Yeah,
it'll look a lot closer to Tennessee AJ than what we've ever seen in Philadelphia.
AJ on a crosser, please. Like, just get him moving in space.
Under center play action.
I mean, we're still counting. We're
you want to
still
hope he's healthy too. Because he did miss last week and all. I did think he didn't look right on that long play.
Yeah.
Where because usually he would accelerate or he would get away, but he just kind of caught it. Or I was thinking, okay, maybe they just told him to get down, but he didn't look right. So more than anything else, I just hope that he's healthy and he's managing his hamstring as best as he can. So that's probably the most important thing that fans should be worried about right now.
Yeah, man.
That's what we like to hear.
And just to kind of echo and touch on a bit of the things you said, that's what makes this AJ thing so interesting to me. I mean, I tell them all the time, I got my start as an Eagles fan. I fell in love with football with the Philadelphia Eagles because of Terrell Owens. I mean, my name is Quell Owens. You see a guy with the same last name as you on the TV screen, and he that great. Yes, it's so easy to fall in love. But for me, how the chaotic this thing has been, it's so interesting because I often just refer back to a lot of the things from the past. Like, easy to start with, I remember AJ and Smitty saying, they said this publicly, like, yeah, man, I love you, man. I love playing with you. I just wish the media would stop trying to break us apart. And here we are years later, and we're still having the same conversation. But just how Nick Sirianni said all offseason, I need you guys to buy in to what we're going to be. We're going to run the ball. Like, your stats may not always look so good. And you
said that.
You've seen legitimate pushback. And it's not that they don't buy in, but I mean, they just want more, which is okay. That's how you can't be great without the greatness of others. You need people to push you. But you've seen legitimate pushback from players like Devonta, from AJ. Like, I mean, yeah, we want to buy in, but it's not fun just watching him get the ball 40 times a game and we block it. I want the ball too. So to see all of this, everything happen in real time. And it's so hilarious to me how once the trade deadline passed, we finally get a real quote from a real executive in the league where it's like, the Eagles not going to trade A.J. Brown. Those aren't the type of players that you trade. And I'm like, what took you so long to open your mouth, sir? You just enjoyed the drama?
Day of the trade deadline was hilarious timing. Like, I think it was 2 hours after the deadline. Deadline was at what, like 3, right? It's at 3. Yeah, it was at 5 p.m. tweet. Yeah, this is what I heard from an executive source. Yeah, that's what everybody's been trying to tell you, and somehow we've just talked ourselves. Now, some Eagles fans have talked themselves into
the executive source could be the assistant of the assistant of the assistant.
Right. Exactly. Pierre, what do you got on this?
Yeah, so reading the Brooks Cabina article on The Athletic, it kind of gave me a new perspective, right? And I think you tweeted it, Q. You were saying about how Eagles fans want to trade AJ. And again, I push back. I don't think any Eagles fans want to trade AJ. I just think, and myself included, I think a lot of people, they don't like how he handles or how he expresses his frustration, right? Like, he's right to feel frustrated, right? Like, he should want the ball. He should want to agree.
I like to say channel. Yeah, so how does he channel?
Yeah,
so,
and
sorry, Pierre.
Yeah, and reading that article, they talked a lot about his upbringing and how he, gets validation from playing football, and they dived a lot into his mindset. And it kind of, like I said, it kind of gave me a new perspective on it, where it's like, again, the dude, he just wants to feel included. He wants to be involved with offense. He doesn't want to feel, and it kind of puts me in the mind of the whole Kevin Durant thing with the Warriors, where it's like, you want to be great so bad, like you want to contribute so bad, almost to a fault, to where it manifests itself in a way that you're perceived as something you're not, right? And so I think for him, like we said, they've kind of started to figure it out more offensively over the last couple of weeks. I think it's just now kind of putting it all together with the under center play action, getting them involved on, routes that he's had success for and things like that. I think everything else will take care of itself. It's just, I think it's like I said from the jump. I think the whole thing is overblown. Even with the whole thing with him and Jalen's relationship, I think all of that was overblown. It's just winning cures all. Just win.
Exactly. But you need to win, but you also need to win, including everybody. And this is it's what I said even last year. Like I just said it from a receiver's perspective. You're going to be frustrated. Like you already only get a certain amount of targets every game. So you're okay with blocking. You're out there because you're willing to block. But when those already limited opportunities diminish, or you're not put in a position to succeed on those limited opportunities, that frustration boils over. And so that's why receivers always have, the diva label next to them, but it's also because they, out of the specialist players, they touch the ball the least, and depending on an offense, we saw it with the Eagles offense. Our receiving receptions in a season record holder is a tight end. There's years where receivers just don't even touch the ball. So it can be a thankless job, or it can be a job where you get a lot of adoration and love. So it's very up and down. But just being able to feel included, I just think is so underrated. So yeah, you need to win. That cures all, but make sure people are included, or at least you make an attempt. Get these guys going. It feels good. When we watch the offense and it's humming, everyone knows, everyone feels it, and there's a sense of inevitability that comes with it. And I think that's when the Eagles are at their best, is when we're using everybody. Because like you pointed out as well, OJ, it's not like we haven't seen 3,000-yard, players on the team with two receivers and a running back. That's not something that we haven't seen on this team. It's something they can do. It's a balance that you have to find, and it also opens things up on the other side. I know this team likes to just hit the same button multiple times if it works, and you can't fault that to a certain extent. But I also you want to keep the defense on their heels a little bit, and so I just think finding that balance is going to help everybody, and I think we're starting to find it. So I'm really excited for the next couple of weeks. OJ, you pointed out that this bye week went about as well as anybody could have hoped for. We're able to get all healthy. Everybody's losing. We're adding players. I think this was probably like the best bye week like we've ever had as Eagles fans. It's hard to imagine a better one. So a lot of positivity heading into the end of the season. The beginning of the season was a mixed bag here and there, a lot of things going on, but it feels like things are kind of clicking and moving in the right direction, and that really gives me a sense of optimism.
And it's such an interesting paradox with AJ. Like, you want to be great so bad, and it frustrates you so much to the point where you're doing all this cryptic stuff, you're tweeting things out and everything. It's interesting to look at it from that perspective to me.
Yeah, but you're talking about a guy, and it's hilarious because it kind of goes to like you said at the beginning of the pod, OJ, of the Eagles and their scouting and how they go about bringing a lot of these guys in. And it's no surprise that a lot of these guys come from schools like Georgia, Alabama, where when you look at these guys,
I'll go back over 5 years or so, but I go back to Jaworski and all those guys, so I have a lot of PTSD. My first nightmare as a fan, not to get personal at all, but my first nightmare as a fan was Super Bowl 15. So I don't know if you guys ever looked at that, but that game was over by the second quarter. And
that's the Raiders game, right?
Right. Jaworski threw 3 interceptions to the same guy in that game. I was 8 years old. I was traumatized. So
don't worry, that was me in 2004 when McNabb was just settling it. So
there you go. Yeah. There you go. Right. But this era of Eagles football and everything, I try not to tell fans what to think and how to think and all, but I mean, if you go back as far as I did, this is probably the greatest era of Eagles football in modern history, which probably predates to where my parents were born. So
absolutely. It's one of the best eras. This stretch of football is one of the best stretches any team has had. Excuse me, but just throughout the NFL, the amount of winning that Eagles fans have become accustomed to in the last 5 years, it's pretty spectacular. And even 2017 you get the Super Bowl, then you have a couple down years, and then you just have this stretch of complete dominance. It's nice, and we deserve this. We deserve this.
It shouldn't be taken for granted. Like, I think I said this on a pod maybe last year, but like, if you look across the NFL, bro, some of these franchises are hopeless. Like, what do you have to look forward to as a Browns fan? Like, so this level of
the
success.
Jets just punted on the season.
And
Yeah,
They got
bro.
players actively sitting there like,
Come on, man.
please
Like,
take me with you.
come get
Take me
me,
with
right?
you.
So yeah. Well, Pierre, I think you said it. And for one, you have hopelessness, and then number two, and again, I don't want to sound like a homer or anything like that because I have to try to keep it objective. But if you look, like you said, taking it for granted, not taking it for granted. If you look around the league, well, the NFL, the NFL's business model, okay, they make so much money, and it literally is a license to print money because they share most, if not all, the revenue, right? So for perspective, because Green Bay is publicly owned, we could see their books, so to speak. Right. And I think the last, what was that? The last TV payout was close to $300 million, right? And I'm sure you guys have an idea what the salary cap is, right? So these teams can pay their player salaries on the TV revenue alone and still have change, still make change, right? So you look at the business model where there's really no added incentive for any of these teams to win, any of them, unless you're maybe one of the smallest markets, even Green Bay. They want to win because it's just like the atmosphere out there, Midwest, Green Bay, small town, all they know is football. But when you take a look at what the Eagles have done these past 5 to 8 years is really remarkable because you have teams like, okay, I know Jerry traded for Quentin Williams, who's a great player and all, might be a little too late, or maybe he's looking, down the line, or maybe he's just made that move just to try to keep the Cowboys relevant, which he admits to, which he really doesn't have to do because they're always the highest grossing team, one of the most valuable teams in the world, if not the most valuable team. And then you look at team that's as cheap as Cincinnati, which is old money, old Paul Brown money and everything. You look at, again, the whole business model where you really don't have to go above and beyond to win. I think if fans maybe tend to look at that for a second, and you really have a ownership and Jeffrey Lurie to where he wants to win. It's part of his makeup where he wants to win. It took him maybe a good while to get it right, but I mean, the run that he's on, both he and how he's on, and even to win a Super Bowl with 2 different coaches in the last 8 years, that's remarkable too. So, like you said, Pierre, I think it's probably good advice not to take for granted what's going on.
And we've seen what bad ownership can look like in our city, right? And Pierre, when you ask what do teams look forward to, it's just the players, man. At that point, it just becomes about the players, and it's watching your favorite player. That's why Browns fans would be broken if they traded.
That's why you have the Jalen Hurts conversation the way it is, man. And it ultimately comes down to Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman. And I mean, of course, Jalen Hurts and his mental makeup, but them doing whatever it takes to win. And then you have teams like the Bengals who, I mean, Carson Palmer told Joe Burrow before he got drafted, like, please make them invest in you. And Joe Burrow thought it was a game like, nah, I'll be okay, right? Because the ownership, like, yeah, we'll take care of you. And you have to essentially blackmail them into paying your 2 best receivers. So it's like, it makes sense why what they call them stats FC sit there the way that they do. They have nothing to look forward to, brother. My quarterback better throw for 450 or else this is going to be a bad week.
Exactly. I mean, and it's crazy because we saw it with the Sixers, and we told Commanders fans, we were like, he's not going to actually put out the money. He's going to just surround them with old talent. And then we saw the Commanders' average age go to 32, and you see their spectacular young player go down with an injury. I just was watching it as a Sixers fan, like, Oh man, like it just sucks. It really just sucks. And so yeah, it just feel very fortunate to have somebody who's willing to foot the bill. And we even saw with the Phillies where they weren't willing to pay more. The Sixers will never go into the luxury tax. It's just these.
You can't put the
Don't,
Phillies.
don't get me started on Phillies, by the way. But
you can't. I mean, the Phillies, you can get on the Phillies for a lot of things, dude. They tried. You watch
this last offseason
Yamamoto did to win that.
They shouldn't have ran it back.
Brother.
They should not have ran the same team back. They literally took the same team into the next season.
And they lost some of their best players. They also the pitching somehow came back. But like I agree with Vic. I didn't want to let go of Sir Anthony. I was a big Sir Anthony guy, man. I was like, we shouldn't let him go.
And it's like baseball is the only sport where there's no salary cap. Just spend money.
But that's why I keep saying. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak about a lot of the other moves that they did or didn't make.
They spend the money
all
on.
I can see, all I say is
they spend the money on.
You watch how the World Series played out. You watch who won World Series MVP, and you should be able to lay your head at bed at night, knowing that the Phillies offer more money than anybody to try to get that man in town. And it just he wanted to play with his friends.
Real quick, I'll try to summarize the Phillies in one thing, in one way. When you look at the players who killed them year after year, what did they look like? What is their makeup? Okay. Not so much the Dodgers this year because I guess it was Yamamoto. I mean, yes, you got to count him too, but before that, who was it? Lindor. Before that, it was Marte. Before that, it was Alvarez. Where are those guys from?
Get me Dominicans. I just like, there's not a good baseball team without Dominicans on it. And it's just like, we're like the one team where it's like playing country music in the locker room. And it's like, brother, like, come on, man.
Phillies fans don't even think Castellanos is Cuban because they mispronounce his name, thinking he's Italian or Greek. So I digress, guys. I'm sorry.
Good, man.
Everybody has seen that, man. The Philly, and it just sucks because they had such good momentum, and it fizzled out. That
I knew how the movie was going to end, man. I knew.
And you know what? When I knew it was going to end was that Diamondback series when they were talking about celebrating in the pool after Game 1. I remember looking at my brother and I said, "It's over. It's over. They're not going to win. They're looking past an opponent. They're gonna lose." And that's exactly what happened.
That is remember when, and you go back to the TO years, as you said, Q, and the Eagles just kept knocking on the door and they just couldn't pull through, right? And I think the one to where they should have won before they even got to the Super Bowl with TO was the Tampa Bay game because all the stars aligned, right? And I felt the same way about the Arizona series with the Phillies in 2023, right? That's the one they should have had. The Mets last year, maybe, the Dodgers, we knew the Dodgers were a little better, but even though they could have won all those things, but Arizona's was the one I felt they should have gotten. Same way Eagles with Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where, what do we all say? Jurevicius is still running.
Yeah. Those stick with you. Well, OJ, I know we've kept you over an hour here, but we wanted to get a little bit of your story as well. Because you've been doing this a while. You have a lot of experience in the field. I mean, you were not. It's not podcasting, but I was doing a little bit of reading. But you were doing internet radio, which I guess is essentially podcasting now. Since 2009.
Right.
So you've been doing this a long time. So really just wanted to hear about your story and, how you, have enjoyed just covering these teams that, you obviously have been a fan of for a long time and, putting on that journalist hat, putting on that fan hat and, just kind of balancing all of that.
Well, it's really a blessing, guys. First of all, being a Philly native, I'm West Philly born and raised. And again, I grew up watching, all of these teams, and to just have it come full circle to, for one, cover sports for part of my living. And then number two, cover and interview even some of the guys that you grew up watching. I mean, like one of the, greatest things was I was nervous as hell, but interviewing Dr. J, who, I idolized as a child, right? But then, it's a lot of fun just going in the Eagles locker room, going in, covering the Phillies, covering the Sixers and all, because it really is fun. But I enjoy the work too. It is hard work. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But it's been an unorthodox journey because it took me a long time to get in these spaces. And one of the things that I'm proud of too is just representing, because there are not a lot of people who cover these sports who look like us, right? Even just going in the press box every Sunday for the home games, and then you look at the rosters, right? Not so much baseball, of course, and hockey, of course, but you look at the rosters, and then you look, upstairs to see who covers these guys. It's not a lot who look like us. And then when you're only getting one perspective, or where you're getting a perspective from just one demographic, are you really getting the full story, right? And we talk so much about AJ Brown. I'll just use this as an example real quick. When I talk to those guys, when I talk to AJ Brown, when I talk to Devontae Smith, most of these players are from the South, right? And for me as a black man, I'm a black man from the hood, from an urban area in the Northeast, right? And we know being black, being a person of color in the Northeast is different from being black in the South. And that's a different demographic. So, when we talked about AJ earlier, and how he feels and all those things, I asked him before they left for Brazil last season, how do you like it in Philadelphia? How's your family treating you? What has been the adjustment? And it's even a question that I want to ask for, a country boy like Landon Dickerson, right? So it's even a different dynamic for someone like him. But overall, just talking about and just writing sports, I learn a lot. I try to learn as much as I can from the players. There's only so much that you can learn from the coaches. But I just really like, writing for the Tribune and everything, which is, one of the oldest African-American newspapers in the country, just representing for, our community. And then also being a good representation, and also being sort of a role model for others, for, whether it's you guys podcasting, whether it's you guys writing, or, seeing young people. And I know there are so many young people who want to be athletes, and, most of the time that's what, 1.5%. But, I try to be a model for young people to say, hey, you can be in this position. You can be a writer. You can cover sports, or you can even be someone who works for the team, or you could be an executive for the team, or things of that nature. So just overall, I enjoy what I do. I'm not saying that it's not hard, because there were times that I've wanted to quit, because do I really feel like I'm making an impact? Because the demographics and the balance is so uneven as far as who covers sports. But I get inspired by others who have been in the game much longer than I have. Some have been retired and all, and they have encouraged me to keep going. And I do kind of pinch myself sometimes when I first got into these press boxes and everything. I'm like, wow, I'm really here, and it's almost like a bit of imposter syndrome for a little while. But once you belong, you know what you're talking about, and same like you guys are and everything. And again, I just want to be a good representation for everyone who follows me and everyone who reads my work, because again, we all can get our sports from anywhere in the world, anywhere on the phone and everything, whether it's accurate or not. But I just try to be a good representation of what I do and who I represent.
Definitely, man. I definitely wanted to get this question to you first and foremost. Before I get the question to you,
Cool.
I wanted to say thank you, because first, everything you just said, I know how you say you don't know the impact that you're making out, but it's guys like me. It's a lot of us out here who we watch guys like you. It's easy for us to keep pushing because you give us hope. But
thank you, man. I appreciate that. No pressure, but I appreciate that.
of course, man, of course. But even that aside, I listen to you say how you you kind of make it your life's work, not only just to be able to cover the teams that you love, but make sure that you're able to impact the people like you in that area. So I see that you've kind of taken a liking to HBCU sports. Me, I was blessed enough to attend the first HBCU 1854, the first HBCU for sure. Lincoln University. My wife is a graduate of the illustrious Bowie State University. I'm from Washington, D.C. I spent a lot of my time growing up in the Upward Bound program, which was hosted at Howard University. HBCUs, they run through and through in me and my family and things of that nature. So I see you had the opportunity to go to cover, of course, the game with Deshaun and Mike Vick, DSU and Norfolk State. I seen you had the chance to drop the piece about Eddie George, who's now at Bowling Green, but you touched on his time back at TSU and the impact he had on that program. What is it? What makes it important to you to make sure that you give these programs the platform that they deserve, and kind of how do you go about doing that, man?
Well, that's an awesome question. Well, first of all, another thing that I wanted to mention is I'm a historian as a hobby, right? I'm always intellectually curious, being a historian, not only about Black history, American history, even world history to a degree, but I am like that with sports tenfold, like 100 times, right? I try to learn everything I can about the history of the game, and you could just go right to HBCUs, because I think it's somewhere between 10 and 15% of Pro Football Hall of Famers who are HBCU alums, right? And you can't talk about the history of the NFL without talking about HBCUs, because there was a time where you had, the other league, which is now the AFC, the AFL, where they relied mostly on HBCU players because they needed those players for the league to stay afloat. And then they just happened to become great players. And even like when, the two leagues merged and you had guys like Walter Payton, you had guys like Jerry Rice, who all came from HBCUs. And even though, HBCUs to where, their main focus is academics, which I think any institution should be. We can, get into that with, everything with like Power 4 schools and all. And then so much money involved. But it's a part of history. It's still a part of our culture. It's a part of our lives. Even though, I'm not a college grad myself, I'm not an HBCU grad. Two of my brothers are, Cheney, West Virginia State. I have a niece who's a Howard grad, a cousin who's Howard grad, Morgan State. You can go on and on, right? So it's a big part of our culture, and not only that, but a big part of our history, which should never be forgotten, and it even should be uplifted. So I almost became a fan when it was announced that Delaware State and Norfolk State will play here at the Link, because it's a great opportunity. And then, in Philadelphia, to where it's not a predominantly Black city, but we do make up the majority of the demographic, right? So a lot of Black Philadelphians are HBCU grads, or either their parents were or their grandparents were. And, Philadelphia is really a great representation of the Great Migration. So where did all these people come? They came from the South, and most likely if they went to college, they went to a HBCU, including Cheney and Lincoln in our backyard. So, I just think it's just chronicling history, and also just an extension of our culture.
Yeah, and then I guess I'll get the final question before we get out of here. You talked a lot about, how you were kind of a late bloomer in this industry, and wanting to be that beacon of hope, or representation and things like that. And then I just heard you say you aren't a college grad. Like, what kind of fed that, I guess, proverbial like grind for you, like to get to where you are now? Like, how did you find that willpower?
Well, that's another good question. I could just attest to Pierre, to just going back, many years ago, just being in corporate America. I always knew about sports when I was a kid, before, we had internet and everything. When the NFL schedule would come out, I would have a notebook and I would write the schedule out from week 1 to week 16 every week, right? I always had a hunger. I would write down the Super Bowl scores because it would be in the newspaper. And, before, my grandfather threw the newspaper out, I wanted to chronicle all those things. But also in the early 90s, this is going way back. This is when sports talk got really, really popular, right? And, it's crazy right now the way sports talk is because they just let anybody on the microphone and most people really know what they're talking about, right? And I've done that too, right? But I would hear guys on the radio and they would make predictions and different things. I said, well, I could be as wrong or right as those guys. Why not? Should I be involved? So that gave me the hunger. I didn't necessarily know how to go about it because I was already working everything. I was already grown and all. So I happened to go to broadcast school. And then even when after I went to broadcast school, nobody would give me a job. I couldn't even get a promotion job. I wanted to do radio. So that's where I went into internet radio because a friend of mine who was doing comedy on internet radio in those days, that's where, you had to record, you had to go on live, you had to record it, and then you had to wait probably 6 to 12 hours for your recording to be available to share. So you almost had to wait a day to share what you just did live. So people could actually call in those days. But, one thing led to another. I was able to get on radio from there. I was able to become a writer from there. I didn't set out to be a writer. I just learned to enjoy it. And here I am now. And it's gotten me into these many spaces and all. But to really answer your question, Pierre, I was like, okay, it goes back to the representation. It's like, okay, I know there was a book, I believe it's by Reginald Lewis. He's an entrepreneur, the late Reginald Lewis. And it's really titled, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? And I thought that way about sports. I said, you have all these white guys talking about sports and everything, and they're wrong half the time. So why can't I get involved in that? So that's really what kind of spearheading what kind of sparked me. And, here I am now and everything. And I still feel the same way because things have got worse in media and all. And I'm glad guys like you are really digging into independent media because really what's happening now with the mainstream, it's really just, being really censored and you're not getting what the fans really want or what the fans really desire. So I thank you guys as well. And even just for asking me these questions. So
appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you.
And it means a lot coming from you. We send your tweets a lot in our DMs because we didn't get to cover it today, but like your
Sure.
views on Jalen and just like your views on the team, we're very much aligned with that. And it feels like you kind of said, the media, the national media, the kind of the bigger voices out there, you get a very like censored and like kind of like the version of some things people don't really want, like the AJ Brown thing. Just you keep hearing things, and it's like
life of its own without any substance. And real quick, it's not to say that I don't have any friends in media. I have plenty of friends in media and everything, but it's really journalism as a whole is under attack, and we really have to try to push back on it because if we're not careful, it's not going to exist, at least as we know it.
100%. Like if you can't represent the truth, then nobody's gonna listen to anything.
Truth to power.
I gotta get your number, dog. We gotta chop it up, man.
I will. I'll make sure you get all my information, my number, my email, and of course I extend that to you guys as well. So thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate it anytime.
We really appreciate that. Like just to cap it all off, I think all of the three of our journeys have just kind of been what you talked about earlier. All the three of us, we all listened to people on podcasts for years, and then I just kind of was like
dog,
I do this all the time with my friends. Why don't we just like get on a camera and do it?
Dog, that's the whole reason I started this. I'm like, I see all these people saying and writing all this. I'm like, bro, I can do this. I can do this too.
Exactly. That's why I reached out to Pierre. I was like,
and if we And if we ever get another time together, or you have me on again, we can go deeper into it if you like. So
Got to.
Absolutely.
Man.
No, then we will definitely make that happen. It's been an
In
honor.
a perfect world, the Eagles take care of business, go get the 1 seed in the NFC, and we can do this wild card weekend.
Let's go. I'm down to cover another NFC Championship game at the link anytime.
Anytime. I was able to make it to the Rams game last year. I was so cold.
Best game I've ever covered.
It
My
was
favorite game I ever covered. I know we all had time, but you get to ask me, or if you ask me offline and everything, I'll tell you all about it.
Unbelievable. All right. Well, thank you so much, OJ. Like we said, it's been an honor. We really appreciate your time. Thank you to all 160 of you who joined us today and were able to listen in. We hope you all enjoyed that as much as we did. Make sure you rate, review, listen. 5 stars. Subscribe, the good stuff. And then OJ, if you want to plug, your social medias real quick as well, just so that the people know where to find you.
Sure. At OJ Philly on all platforms, Twitter, X, Instagram. I'm on Blue Sky as well. So you can find me there. And also you can find my work at phillytrib.com. Go right to the sports section. I also do culture stories as well. So thank you.
Definitely, man.
All right. Well, with that, thank you, everybody. And go Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.